This is a PowerPoint on the descent of dragons. Starting with Druid, and you had Ysera Unleashed. I believe Ysera Unleashed is the ultimate ramp Druid card. 9 mana, 4/12 dragon, Battlecry, shuffle 7 Dream Portals into your deck. When drawn, summon a random dragon. This card is the ultimate ramp Druid card. It perfectly encapsulates the idea that ramp Druid is supposed to be getting a lot of mana out early to play large, overstatted minions to then push towards winning the game, rather than being some kind of degenerate combo deck, which is where we have Druid nowadays. Ramp Druid should be about very powerful, large minions that get cheated out early, because it's easier to deal with than just dying because your opponent has infinite mana to play around. You had a lot of cards that fill this idea, but I think Ysera is the absolute pinnacle of the Ramp Druid archetype. This card was beloved by so many. It was incredibly powerful for its time and standard. It was powerful and wild. It is so good. Then, for Hunter, we have Varanus, not the other way. This card was pretty good in Dragon Hunter and Reno Hunter, but, as time went on, when you got into Ashes of Outland, and especially Skullomance, there's just no way to ever play this card anymore. It's too slow. Changing the health of the board to 1 doesn't really matter. Especially because, the only way to get benefit from that was to have something like Explosive Trap up, or to have, an Unleash the Hounds to kill those minions. Many different things to be able to kill those 1-health minions. Varanus just couldn't keep up. It was too slow. Blizzard really put pedal to the metal with, Ashes of Outlands and, Skullomance Academy. Of course, Descent of Dragons was incredibly pushed as well, but this is where, they really took off. So Varanus wasn't able to keep its usage past that point. Of course, Varanus, 6 mana, 7/6 dragon, changed the health of all enemy minions to 1. Sorry, I didn't read that off. But it was a pretty good card. Nowadays, it's just completely useless. There's just no reason to play this. It's technically still just worse than Acid Maw, because any kind of effect like this is just worse than Acid Maw, but that's also because Acid Maw was buffed. Then for Mage, you have Malygos, Aspect of Magic, 5 mana, 2/8 dragon, Battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, discover an upgraded Mage spell. And then, the upgraded Mage spells are either cheaper, they deal more damage, or they draw more cards, or add another minion to your hand in the case of Malygos' Tome. Compared to the base of these classic spells, this card was pretty good in Reno Mages and Dragon Mages, things like that, but as time went on, you got no good support for Reno Mage, you got no good dragons, and the card just fell off. Nowadays, even if you gave Mage very good Reno and Dragon support, I doubt this card would see any play. It's not that the spells are bad, it's that the 5 mana tax of getting those spells is way too much. Malygos has a bad body as well, being a 2/8. It doesn't really push very much, and it's not like it has an onboard effect that wants to make use of that 8 health, so it's just not very good. Then you have Paladin with Nozdormu the Timeless, 4 mana, 8/8 dragon, Battlecry, set each player 10 mana crystals. This is easily the best one of the dragons today. It's the only one that still actually sees play. Every slow Paladin deck, for probably now until a long time, will play Nozdormu the Timeless. Paladin has no other ramp aside from Nozdormu, and you don't really feel that bad giving your opponent 10 mana most of the time, because if your opponent was going to win when you gave them 10 mana, they're probably going to win anyway, or you can now actually win against them because you have 10 mana to play your cards. You can play your Uther of the Emid Blade to then set up your Exodia combo. You can just play a regular control style Paladin and just go buck wild playing your expensive cards like that. There's so many things that you can do with this card because having a lot of mana is really good. It's also incredibly overstated, so it is a threat to your opponent. If they leave it on the board, they will take 8 damage, which does add up. It's just very powerful, and the real reason this card took off, in my opinion, is Red Scale Dragon Tamer, which was released in Darkmoon Faire. It's a 2 mana, 2/3 Murloc that Death Rattle draws you a dragon, makes Nozdormu incredibly consistent. It's so powerful, and I don't know, Nozdormu is just cool. I feel like anyone that has seen the animations of this card think it's just objectively cool, and I think that's hard to argue. Then, for Priest, you have Murazond the Infinite, 8 mana, 8/8 dragon, play all cards your opponent played last turn. This card gives me nightmares. Playing the Playing Control, Priest, Mirrors at the end of Dark Moon Fair, where your matchup was basically decided on who could discover the most Murozond, was not fun. It was one of the worst experiences ever in Hearthstone. Don't let anyone try and tell you that it was fun. It was boring. It was grindy. It had no way to win the game. You would go to fatigue every game because there was no win conditions in these decks. And Murozond, you had to get as many Murozond as possible just because it gave you so many cards. Play all the cards your opponent played last turn, you would just win the game if you had enough of those. Because Soul Mirror was also an incredibly powerful card. It would be able to replay their Soul Mirror. It was just so huge for what this Murozond could do. As well as, if you played Murozond and that was your whole turn, your opponent couldn't play Murozond back. So whoever had Murozond first was able to get so much value, because if you play Murozond, all they're going to get is an 8/8 for their Murozond, which isn't worth it. So playing the Murozond first became incredibly important in the matchup. I'm sorry I'm getting like PTSD from that. It was terrible. It was so terrible. Going to the next one. Then, for Rogue, you have Waxadread, 5 mana, 7/5, Elemental Dragon. Death Battle, shuffle a candle into your deck that resummons Waxadread when drawn. If this card was printed in like 2017 or 2018, it would probably be an all-time Rogue Legendary where people were like, oh man, this is so defining for this era of Rogue. But it wasn't. It was printed by Descent of Dragons, and by that time, it was just way too slow. Didn't actually provide anything on board. Just not very strong. But I'm genuinely telling you, if this card came out in like Galls and Catacombs as the Rogue Legendary, it would have been it would be an iconic Rogue Legendary as being one of the most powerful ever. This card, on paper, should have been insane, but it just didn't really get to do much because of the power creep that had been in the game in just that short year. This card would have been good throughout 2018 Year of the Raven as well. Then you have Shaman with Nidhogg. Nidhogg, I don't know. 6 mana, 5/5 dragon, battlecry, summon 2/0/3 eggs. Next turn they hatch into 4/4 drakes with rush. I don't think I've ever seen this card played in my entire life. I've never played it. It's just, it doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know what Shaman deck would ever want to run this card. I'm just genuinely confused by this card. Shaman in Descent of Dragons was playing Galakrond Shaman, so it's not like they would ever care about Nidhogg anyway. I'm just genuinely confused by this card. It doesn't fit anything in Shaman. It doesn't make any Shaman deck better. There's nothing to play around it in Shaman. I just truly don't understand this card. Then, for Warlock, you have Zeraku the Warped, 8 mana, 4/12 dragon. Whenever your hero takes damage, summon a 6/6 Nether Drake. This card did see a little bit of play in Handlock during Descent of Dragons. I specifically had to look this up because I couldn't remember it. I was running a couple like high legend decks, but a lot of them didn't run it as well. It definitely just had no uses past Descent of Dragons. It was just way too slow because he really put on the gas during Ashes of Outlands and Skullman's, like I said. There's just no reason to ever play this card. As well as, this card just doesn't really do that much. For an 8-drop, only summoning 6/6s after you take damage is pretty bad. Maybe they could have had Rush or Taunt and that would have been good, but like I don't know. This card just doesn't feel like anything that would have ever made sense to be good, even back in Descent of Dragons. So I don't really understand. I never played the card. I never played Handlock, so I don't remember seeing this card. I genuinely can't remember it, so that's why I'm like confused, but I don't know. Then you have Warrior with Deathwing, Mad Aspect, 8 mana, 12/12 dragon, battlecry, attack all other minions. This card was incredible. Its entire time it was in Standard, it saw play. It's even back in Standard now and doesn't really see any play, so that should tell you about the power creep between the game. This card saw so much play its entire use. It was pretty decent and wild for a little while as well. It's just, it clears the board and then will leave you maybe like a 12/4 on board for 8 mana. And that's great. Being able to kill like 8/8s and then having a 12 attack minion live on the board, being able to clear the board, being able to just tempo an 8 mana 12/12 is also pretty nice. It did so much for Warrior at that time. It's great removal, great body, great everything. This card was genuinely great while it was in Standard. And yeah, that's going to be it for me. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what your favorite dragon is. Yes, Dragon Queen Alex Strozlide is right here, I know. But it's not a class card, so I wouldn't put it. But I had to put the card anyway. Yeah, tell me what your favorite one is down below. Do you think any of them should come back? Do you think any of them should be buffed? Tell me stuff like that, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Shadows are rising again, darker than they've ever been.